Brooklyn Beckham didn't hint. He didn't tease. He didn't leave room for interpretation. When he posted that he does not want to reconcile with his family and that he is finally standing up for himself, it landed like a door slamming shut. Not a pause. Not a break. A full stop. And that's what shook people the most. Not the fact that there's tension. Not even that there's conflict. But that Brooklyn sounded finished. For decades, the Beckham family has sold one of the cleanest images in celebrity culture. Strong marriage, tight-knit kids, discipline, legacy, no public meltdowns, no explosive scandals. The kind of family people point to and say, if anyone has it figured out, it's them. Which is exactly why this feels so jarring. Because families that look perfect don't usually collapse this loudly. And they definitely don't collapse with one of their own, openly declaring he wants nothing to do with the rest. What most people don't realize is that this didn't start with a viral post. It didn't start with a headline. It didn't even start with a fight. People close to the situation say the cracks had been forming quietly for years. Small disagreements that never reached the public. Awkward moments that got brushed off. Tension that was always there, just carefully managed behind expensive walls and polished smiles. Until one event took everything that had been simmering and forced it into the open. That moment was the wedding. Brooklyn has claimed that on what was supposed to be one of the most important nights of his life, a night centered around him and Nicola, something happened that permanently shifted how he saw his family. According to his version, he had planned a romantic first dance with his wife. A private, symbolic moment meant to mark the beginning of their marriage. Instead, he says his mother stepped in and took that moment over. Not as a playful interruption, not as a lighthearted gesture, but in a way that left him blindsided. He also says Victoria canceled making Nicola's wedding dress at the last minute, forcing a sudden scramble days before the ceremony. To outsiders, these might sound like surface-level disagreements. But inside emotionally charged environments like weddings, symbolism matters. And people who were there say the energy in the room changed instantly. What was supposed to be joyful suddenly felt tense. What was supposed to unite two families quietly fractured them. Nicola allegedly left the room in tears. And from that point forward, nothing ever went back to normal. But that still wasn't the moment things became irreversible. The real turning point came when communication stopped being emotional and started becoming legal. Sources say Brooklyn sent his parents a cease and desist letter. Not a text, not a phone call, not even a private email. A legal notice telling them to stop mentioning him publicly and to communicate only through lawyers. That single move sent shockwaves through the Beckham household. Because in families like theirs, legal boundaries don't happen unless something has completely broken. David and Victoria reportedly responded with a private letter of their own. No threats, no demands, no public statements. Just two parents asking one thing. Proof that their son was okay. Proof that he was safe. Proof that he wasn't being pushed into something he might later regret. Instead of opening a door, that letter allegedly pushed Brooklyn even further away. Days later, he went public. He accused his parents of controlling narratives in the media, of protecting the family brand at the expense of real relationships, of placing lies into the press to preserve a perfect image. And most importantly, he rejected the idea that Nicola controls him. He says the opposite is true, that his parents controlled his life for years, that he finally feels free. But here's where the story starts getting complicated. Because while Brooklyn insists he's breaking away from control, his entire world has quietly shifted into one very specific orbit. The Peltz orbit. Brooklyn now lives inside Nicola's family ecosystem. He moves in their social circles. He builds his daily life around their structure. And according to reports, communicates with his own parents only through intermediaries. Not casually, not organically, formally. That's why people aren't just calling this messy family drama anymore. They're calling it a power shift. And at the center of that shift is Nicola's father, Nelson Peltz. Nelson Peltz isn't a celebrity. He isn't chasing clout. He's a billionaire investor known for corporate takeovers, boardroom battles, and aggressive restructuring. He operates in a world built on leverage, control, and outcomes. People familiar with his circle describe him as blunt, decisive, and unimpressed by image alone. According to multiple reports, Nelson has never been particularly convinced by Brooklyn's career path. Photography, cooking, lifestyle branding. Each new pivot reportedly reinforced the same internal perception, that Brooklyn is still searching, still unfocused, still trying to figure out who he actually is. No public insults, no loud confrontations. Just quiet skepticism. And when that skepticism comes from someone with that level of wealth and influence, it carries weight, especially when you're living under their roof. There's another detail that has made a lot of people uneasy. Before the wedding, Brooklyn and Nicholas signed a strict prenuptial agreement. If the marriage ever ended, Brooklyn would walk away with only what he and Nicola built together. No access to the Peltz fortune, no safety net from her family wealth. On paper, that's standard for ultra-wealthy families, but emotionally, it created a terrifying scenario. If Brooklyn has already cut ties with his parents and the marriage were ever to fall apart, he wouldn't just lose a spouse. He'd lose his entire support system. That fear is reportedly what haunts David and Victoria the most. Not the money, not the headlines. The idea that their son has placed his entire future inside one relationship. And despite Brooklyn's insistence that he's happier than ever, people who've known him long before Nicola entered his life are starting to speak in quieter, more uncomfortable ways. One of the most unexpected voices came from Brooklyn's former youth football coach. Someone who worked with him when he was a teenager, long before tabloids were dissecting his marriage. He didn't take sides, he didn't blame anyone. He simply described a childhood filled with anxiety, pressure, and isolation that most people can't imagine. Full-time security at 14, constant scrutiny, no real sense of normalcy. His message wasn't that Brooklyn is right or wrong, it was that Brooklyn grew up vulnerable. Vulnerable to influence. Vulnerable to believing extreme actions are the only form of self-protection. And that brings the conversation to the part nobody wants to say out loud. Nicola did not leave her world to join Brooklyn's. Brooklyn left his world to join Nicola's. She stayed close to her family. She kept her support system. She maintained financial independence. Brooklyn distanced himself from his parents. He lost access to the structure he grew up with. He tied his emotional future to one household. That imbalance doesn't automatically mean anyone is evil. It doesn't make Nicola a villain. It doesn't make Brooklyn weak. But isolation changes people. When one person or one family becomes your only emotional anchor, their influence grows naturally. Even without commands, even without ultimatums. And through all of this, Nelson Peltz has stayed silent. No statements, no denials, no public defense of Brooklyn. People who know his world say that silence isn't passive, that it's strategic. In elite circles, cutting off your family isn't seen as strength. It raises eyebrows, it signals instability, it creates risk, and risk is something investors avoid. Another layer quietly shaping this feud is Brooklyn's professional identity. David Beckham built his legacy through discipline, repetition, and long-term focus. Brooklyn's path has been exploratory, uneven, and unresolved. Neither approach is inherently wrong, but when one family values endurance and legacy, and the other values leverage and outcomes, friction becomes inevitable. People close to David and Victoria say the shift in their son didn't happen overnight. Choices he once made independently began getting deferred. Private conversations started involving lawyers. Language changed, tone changed. Brooklyn rejects that version of events, but the timing is impossible to ignore. The deeper he went into his marriage, the further he drifted from his parents. And there's another uncomfortable detail. Brooklyn's siblings remain close to David and Victoria. They build careers, they post together, they attend family events, they've managed independence without complete separation. That contrast fuels speculation. If the Beckham household was truly as controlling as Brooklyn claims, why did only one child walk away this completely? Behind the scenes, insiders say the personal cost of Brooklyn's decision has been heavy. No casual check-ins, no spontaneous dinners, no family safety net. Every interaction is formal, filtered, carefully managed. Once relationships reach that stage, rebuilding becomes exponentially harder. Most celebrity family feuds follow a pattern: shock, silence, reconciliation. This one doesn't. Because this isn't just emotional, it's structural. Two powerful families, two value systems, one son caught in between. And the longer this drags on, the more permanent it starts to feel. Brooklyn says he has no regrets. David and Victoria reportedly say they'll wait as long as it takes. Nicola remains present, central, unwavering. Whether she's protecting her marriage or quietly shaping the narrative depends entirely on perspective. But one thing is undeniable. Brooklyn Beckham's life has fundamentally changed, and there may be no clean way back from this. So the real question isn't who's right or wrong. It's whether Brooklyn chose freedom or whether he traded one system for another. And if he ever changes his mind, will anyone even let him come back?